Last week, standing by the dining table as everyone laughed and toasted Mom's 65th birthday, I suddenly wished I could disappear. There I was, Lena Nichols, 37 years old, a nonprofit executive director who's spent the last 15 years pouring every ounce of herself into opening educational doors for others. Yet, in my own family, I'm the invisible one, the financial lifeline no one sees, the quiet force holding every piece together. I arranged the entire party, coordinated catering, music, and decorations, and paid for nearly half the costs without so much as a thank you. The irony wasn't lost on me as I caught Luna Tanner's smile from across the room. She looked flawless, radiant even, but there was something cold beneath that friendly exterior, something I couldn't quite place. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself it was just stress, nothing more. But deep inside, I clung to a secret no one else knew. The house we were celebrating in was legally mine. I'd bought it with my own savings years ago, quietly, without fanfare or demands. It was my silent power, a hidden anchor in a storm that was slowly tightening around me. For now, though, I tucked those feelings away and forced a smile, still believing family love would be enough to hold us all together. The memory stings every time I close my eyes. The summer I turned 17, when Mom sat me down with that cold, dismissive look she reserves for moments she thinks will be a reality check. "You're not college material, Lena," she said, voice steady but cruel. Then, without hesitation, she handed over my entire college fund, $67,000 in savings, to Lisa's account. I remember the weight of that transfer like a physical blow. That money was supposed to be my ticket, my hard-earned ticket, to Harvard. I had worked 3 part-time jobs that summer, saving every extra dollar, dreaming of stepping onto that ivy-covered campus. But Lisa, with her effortless charm and golden child status, was suddenly the favored one. At every family dinner, every gathering, Mom's praise flowed freely for Lisa's sports achievements, her social graces, while my efforts and grades faded into the background, as if invisible. When I confronted Mom, she waved off my pain, calling it tough love, telling me she was just preparing me for life's harsh realities. I wanted to believe her, tried to rationalize that maybe Lisa truly needed it more. But that moment cut deep, a sharp wedge dividing us, marking me as lesser in the family's eyes no matter how much I sacrificed or achieved. I've given up so much over the years to hold this family together. Quietly, without complaint, I've covered Lisa's tuition payments, over $150,000 in total, while canceling vacations I desperately wanted to take, working overtime shifts just to keep the household bills paid on time. Daniel, my husband, has noticed. Sometimes he looks at me with a mixture of admiration and concern, gently suggesting, "Maybe it's time to set some boundaries, Lena." But I always brush it off with, "Family is everything." At my last promotion, I even turned down a bonus, knowing that money would help pay for Lisa's latest trip abroad. The sacrifices feel endless, and yet the family treats them as if they're just expected. No thank you, no acknowledgement. Luna is always there too, her presence impossible to ignore now that she's part of the family through marriage. Her smiles are thin, her compliments hollow, like a mask hiding something sharper beneath. And the house, the one I own, legally, remains our family home, with everyone else living in comfort while I quietly bear the weight. That deed in my name is my secret power, a silent reminder that I have a foothold, a place of control I've never dared to use. For now, I remain the unspoken backbone, the invisible force keeping everything from toppling. Thanksgiving dinner last year was a turning point, the first time Luna's quiet undermining spilled into the open. We were all gathered around the table, plates full, laughter filling the room, when she dropped the barb so casually it felt like a knife twisting inside me. "Lena always thinks she's so special because of that fancy degree," she said, voice dripping with false sweetness. The room froze. An awkward laugh broke the silence, but I could feel my face flush, burning with humiliation. Everyone looked at me. Mom said nothing. Lisa avoided my eyes, and Luna just smirked, leaning back as if she'd won the moment. I wanted to snap back, to defend myself, but all I could manage was a quiet, "That's not fair." It was a small act of resistance, but it was something. I left the table early, retreating upstairs, hands trembling as I closed the door behind me. That night, lying awake in the dark, I told myself she was just stressed, that maybe tomorrow would be better. But deep down, doubt had begun to seep in, poisoning the family harmony I'd so desperately tried to preserve. Maybe the family I believed in was an illusion, and I was just fooling myself. After Thanksgiving, the subtle attacks grew sharper, like a relentless tide eroding every inch of my resolve. Luna's whispers wound around family gatherings, poison disguised as casual chatter. "Lena's always been too sensitive," I overheard Aunt Marge say quietly to Daniel, her voice laced with something that felt suspiciously like doubt. "Maybe she needs to lighten up." My chest tightened. That phrase, "lighten up," was a verdict, a dismissal of everything I'd endured, as if my feelings were some childish tantrum. Luna's laughter echoed faintly from the other room, smooth and calculated, as if each word had been rehearsed to perfection. She was spinning a web, and I was caught in it, every thread pulling tighter. I noticed the subtle shifts, the quick glances exchanged when I entered the room, the way conversations hushed when I approached. Even Daniel's reassurances started sounding unsure, his eyes searching mine for clues I didn't have. "Are you sure you're not overthinking this?" he asked one night, and the doubt in his voice felt like a crack in the foundation I'd built around myself. I hated that question, because for the first time, I wondered if maybe she was right. Was I imagining things? Was I the problem? The gaslighting was relentless, seeping into every conversation, every look, every interaction with family. I felt trapped inside a narrowing circle, my own reality questioned at every turn. One afternoon, I sat alone in the kitchen, the hum of the dishwasher filling the silence, trying to piece together what was happening. Luna's words replayed in my mind, each one a cruel echo. "You're not reliable. You're jealous of Lisa. You think you're better than everyone else." Her voice was honeyed but deadly, and I realized this wasn't just about undermining me. It was about isolating me completely. I rubbed my temples, trying to stave off the headache blossoming behind my eyes. The house I owned felt less like a sanctuary and more like a cage, with Luna's eyes always watching, waiting for me to crack. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but my voice felt caught somewhere between fear and exhaustion. I was losing the war before I'd even truly begun. The worst part was the silence from those who once stood by me. Family members had become quiet observers, their loyalty swayed by Luna's subtle machinations. I caught a glimpse of Daniel talking with Aunt Marge in hushed tones, their expressions unreadable but distant. It was as if the people I trusted were slipping away, pulled by an invisible current Luna had unleashed. I felt like a ghost in the home I'd built, the invisible backbone unraveling beneath the weight of lies. Every day was a battle to hold myself together, to prove I was still here, still real. But Luna's war was silent and cruel, and I feared I might not survive it unbroken. Determined to end the silent torment, I thought a peaceful confrontation might clear the air. I arranged to meet Luna and Mom in the living room, the familiar space heavy with unspoken tension. I spoke calmly, laying out the facts as clearly as I could. The college fund, the sacrifices I'd made, the growing distance that felt like a chasm swallowing us whole. "I just want honesty," I said, voice steady despite the flutter of nerves. "Fairness, for all of us." Luna's eyes shimmered with tears, a practiced vulnerability that pulled at the edges of my resolve. She painted herself as the wounded party, victimized by my accusations and harsh judgments. I watched Mom nod slowly, her expression a blend of sorrow and disappointment as she echoed Luna's words. "Lena, you're being too harsh. This family needs peace." The air thickened with suffocating silence, broken only by the quiet agreement of my uncle, who had come as a neutral party. "It's just family drama," he said dismissively, waving away my concerns as trivial and self-centered. The word drama felt like a slap, like my pain was being reduced to a childish tantrum. I fought the urge to cry, swallowing the lump lodged deep in my throat. When I finally stood, the room seemed colder, the faces I'd hoped would defend me now turning away. I left that meeting feeling smaller, diminished, a ghost retreating into the shadows. The hope I had clung to for peace vanished, replaced by a stark, aching realization. The family I loved wasn't ready to hear my truth. They preferred their illusions. Months later, at a gala meant to celebrate achievements and build connections, Luna staged her cruelest attack yet. The room buzzed with polite conversation and clinking glasses, but beneath the surface, a storm was gathering. Luna stepped forward, her smile sharp as she brandished my personal emails, twisting their meaning like a knife. "Lena's been living off family money," she declared loudly, voice dripping with disdain. The words echoed through the hall, silencing conversations and freezing smiles. She painted me as spoiled, ungrateful, a fraud undermining the very causes I'd dedicated my life to. Daniel's face tightened, his jaw clenched in disbelief, while colleagues exchanged uneasy glances that stabbed sharper than any accusation. I stood rooted, the room spinning as whispers rippled like wildfire. My nonprofit's board members turned away. Conversations paused mid-sentence, donors shifting uncomfortably in their seats. 2 major contributors excused themselves quietly, their support evaporating like smoke. The financial damage was immediate, but the social wound ran deeper. Luna's public betrayal had planted a seed of doubt where trust had once flourished. The cold, calculating gleam in her eyes as I quietly slipped out told me everything. This wasn't a mistake, an emotional outburst, or a lapse in judgment. It was a calculated, merciless move to isolate me completely, to strip away every ounce of credibility I'd fought so hard to earn. Despite the devastation, I reached out once more, driven by a fragile hope that forgiveness might heal the wounds. I sent Luna a message, offering a chance to rebuild trust, to start fresh. "I need honesty and respect," I wrote plainly, "or I can't be part of this family dynamic anymore." The reply came swiftly but coldly, laced with mockery and disdain. Luna called me naive in private messages, laughing at my vulnerability like it was some childish joke. The sting of that rejection cut deeper than her public betrayals ever could. For a moment, I felt utterly shattered, my heart breaking in the silence of my own room. I whispered to Daniel, I did everything I could. There was no warmth in his eyes, only shared sorrow. I realized then I had crossed a line she refused to acknowledge. Luna had no intention of stopping, no desire to mend what she had broken. The family I'd tried to hold together was splintering under the weight of her cruelty. And me? I was left standing alone, my hope for reconciliation crushed beneath the cold, unyielding reality of her rejection. The house I owned felt emptier than ever, a hollow symbol of the battles I'd lost. But the fight in me still burned quietly, though flickering in the growing darkness. After Luna's cold dismissal, the isolation swallowed me whole. I watched as the people I thought would stand by me quietly pulled away, their calls unanswered, their messages ignored. Lisa stopped answering my texts altogether, the silence a sharp contrast to the warm, sisterly bond I once believed we shared. Mom, once a faint but reliable connection, now treated my attempts at communication like dust settling on an old piece of furniture, invisible and unimportant. Daniel remained my steadfast anchor, the one constant voice reminding me I wasn't completely alone, but even his support couldn't stave off the overwhelming tide of loneliness that pressed down on me every day. I lay awake at night, the darkness thick around me, thoughts swirling with self-doubt. Was I truly the problem? Had I misread everything? Imagined the betrayals and slights? The emotional exhaustion was suffocating. Each day blurred into the next, a relentless drag of quiet pain and whispered questions that echoed no answers. I found myself sitting in silence for hours, staring out the window at a world that seemed to have moved on without me. My hands would tremble as I tried to hold on to some thread of hope, to the fragile idea that love could still bind this fractured family. But the fractures only grew wider. I replayed every conversation, every smile that felt forced, every shadow of judgment hidden beneath a word. It hurt more than I could say to watch the family I'd spent years trying to nurture turn cold or indifferent. I questioned my worth, my place, sometimes wondering if surrendering to their narrative, that I was the outsider, the difficult one, would be easier than the endless fight. But beneath that crushing weight, a flicker of something stubborn began to glow, a quiet, simmering resolve. I could no longer carry their betrayal silently, no longer let their dismissals define me. Something inside me whispered that I had to reclaim my dignity, to stand for myself, even if it meant standing alone. The ache in my chest was fierce, but it lit a fire I hadn't known was there. I clenched my fists, promising myself I wasn't done yet. The night of my 37th birthday should have been a beacon, a hopeful gathering where laughter filled the air and love healed old wounds. Instead, it became the scene of my deepest betrayal. I had spent weeks organizing the party, paying for half the costs, arranging decorations, hoping that this celebration might thaw the icy distance that had settled over the family. As the guests arrived, I kept a nervous smile plastered on my face, watching for signs of warmth, for moments of connection. Then, in the middle of the room, Mom stood and dropped a bomb that shattered everything. She announced, plainly and coldly, that she had transferred the deed to the house, the home I had painstakingly purchased and maintained, into Lisa's name, without telling me, without asking. The gasps echoed like thunder. I could feel my heart stop, my breath catch in my throat. The room spun, faces blurring into a nightmare tableau of shock and disbelief. Daniel confronted Mom quietly but firmly, anger flashing in his eyes. But Mom's reply was cruel and final. Lena was never meant to have this. It's better with Lisa. The words stabbed deeper than any knife. Family, friends, colleagues I'd invited, even my closest allies, watched in stunned silence. At that moment, the veil lifted from my eyes. I was not simply unloved. I was being erased. As the cold clarity washed over me, I looked at Daniel and whispered, "It's time." That night, alone in my study, the silence around me was almost deafening. I sat behind my desk, the weight of the day pressing down like a lead cloak. The raw pain of decades of sacrifice and rejection played on a loop in my mind. Every overlooked effort, every slight, every moment I'd hoped for recognition that never came. But beneath the ache, a new emotion began to rise. Anger. Not the shouting, explosive kind, but a slow-building fire that crept from my core outward. I realized how long I had ignored the pattern, how deeply I'd wanted to believe love could fix what was broken. Now it was clear. The favoritism, the lies, the sabotage, they were all deliberate, calculated to diminish me. My grief for the family I thought I had turned to steel-hard resolve. I whispered to the empty room, "Never again." I thought of the secret power I'd held all along. The house, the financial leverage, the emails and bank statements that told the truth no one wanted to hear. That power was mine to wield now. I was no longer the quiet victim. I was a force to be reckoned with, and I would claim what was rightfully mine. Later that evening, Daniel and I sat together at the kitchen table, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. The weight of the day lingered between us, but so did a new sense of purpose. "We can't fight fire with fire," I said quietly, meeting his steady gaze. "But we can cut off everything they rely on." He nodded slowly, cautious but unwavering in his support. We spoke carefully, drafting a plan, identifying Luna as the primary target, the root of the poison that had corrupted our family. I outlined the steps, withdrawing financial and emotional support silently, methodically, to prevent them from realizing what was happening until it was too late. Daniel helped me make calls to a lawyer, exploring my legal rights regarding the house deed and the tangled family finances. The strategic shift was palpable. I could feel the threads of control slipping into my hands, weaving a new future. "This is just the beginning," I told him, voice low but resolute. The fire inside me burned brighter than ever, a cold, calculated force ready to reclaim what was mine, and to finally stand unbroken. I sat at the kitchen table, papers strewn all around me like a battlefield. The glow from my laptop illuminated my tired face as I began mapping the fragile architecture of our family's dependencies, how much they leaned on me in ways they never acknowledged. The mortgage alone was $3,200 a month, a number that felt both immense and invisible, quietly paid without fanfare for years. Then the utilities, electricity, gas, water, regular bills I'd covered without question, car insurance for Mom and Lisa, school supplies I'd quietly bought, Even the emotional labor of listening to their worries and smoothing over conflicts. It was a ledger of sacrifice written in silence, and now it was my secret weapon. I consulted with a lawyer, someone who could unravel this tangled web with cold, precise expertise. Together, we combed through bank statements, tracing transfers that seemed ordinary on the surface but beneath held a darker truth. Emails revealed sneaky loan agreements and clandestine moves I'd never been told about. Luna and Mark had been funneling funds through back channels, tightening their grip on what they thought was theirs. My heart ached as I read the evidence. The house deed had been transferred improperly, but thankfully it was reversible. That nugget of legal hope made my chest tighten, not with relief, but with a fierce determination. For the first time, I thought, they need me more than I need them. The weight of years of being the overlooked pillar pressed down, but this mapping gave me a strange sense of power. I started cataloging everything: financial accounts, legal documents, emotional debts, each item a thread in the fabric they had tried to unravel. It was meticulous work, but I welcomed the distraction, letting the numbers and facts clear the fog of betrayal. I whispered to myself, this is the groundwork, the foundation for their unraveling. I could almost hear the faint crumbling beneath their feet, the fragile security they'd built on my silence beginning to fracture. The cold withdrawal I planned wasn't just strategy, it was justice recalibrated. Tonight the battlefield shifted. Yet amid the technicalities, a quiet voice inside kept reminding me of the stakes. This wasn't just numbers or papers, it was my home, my family, my life. The implications were terrifying, but I steadied my breathing, feeling the familiar pulse of resolve thumping beneath my skin. I wasn't just counting debts, I was reclaiming everything they tried to deny me. And as the clock ticked past midnight, I finally allowed myself a breath, knowing the next moves would define what kind of woman I was willing to be: strong, unyielding, prepared. Behind the veneer of calm, I was already moving. Quietly, deliberately, I changed every password tied to the house account, the mortgage payments, the utility bills, locking out Luna and anyone who might use their access to sabotage me again. I updated legal documents with the lawyer, ensuring that my ownership was crystal clear and protected from any further tampering. Calls were made to financial institutions, alerts set for suspicious activity, and notices poised to fly if the need arose. All of this I did in silence, like a ghost haunting the edges of their awareness. Meanwhile, family dinners and calls kept up a facade of normalcy. Luna smiled across the table, eyes shining with false warmth, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my stillness. It was exhausting, maintaining that calm when every fiber inside me screamed to shatter the mask. At times, I caught myself staring into space, heart thudding as I imagined what breaking silence would look like. But I reminded myself this was the calm before the storm, the patient waiting before the strike. I felt like a time bomb wound tight, every quiet action a deliberate step closer to the reckoning. Daniel was my only confidant. He watched with steady eyes, a silent partner in this unfolding plan. We shared no words about the tension, but the energy between us was thick with unspoken promise. This was no longer just survival. It was preparation. The house of cards was wobbling. Soon, it would fall. Late one night, while digging through old emails for evidence, my breath caught on a thread I hadn't expected. It was between Luna and Mom, my mother, whose silence had always felt like a betrayal, but now revealed a deeper conspiracy. They were coordinating behind my back, plotting to undermine me in ways I hadn't dared imagine. The emails spoke chillingly of diverting my college fund, planting seeds of doubt in Lisa's mind, even falsifying documents to transfer the house deed. My chest tightened until it felt like it might crack. Worse still, Mark Tanner, Luna's husband, was complicit, quietly managing the family's finances to ensure their plans succeeded without a hitch. I reread the messages, disbelief crashing over me like icy water. The enemy wasn't just Luna, it was a coordinated team working against me. The sting of double betrayal burned fiercely. Joyce, my mother, the woman I had once trusted implicitly, was in on this secret war. The realization made my hands tremble, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. This wasn't some petty family drama or misunderstanding spun from jealousy. This was a deliberate, ruthless operation to erase me. The urgency to act flared inside me, the simmering fire igniting into a blaze. This was no longer about healing wounds. It was war, and I was ready to fight. I sat back, my mind racing as the magnitude settled like a heavy stone in my gut. They had thought they could isolate me, discredit me, erase my contributions to this family. But their secret alliance was my proof that I was never the outsider. They were the conspirators. The stakes had just doubled, and so had my resolve. My voice was steadier now, harder as I whispered to myself through the shock. They don't see what comes next. They're about to learn how dangerous I can be. The quiet night stretched around me, the shadows thick with potential. This was the moment the battlefield shifted from invisible wounds to open confrontation. The first moves were precise and unyielding. I notified the bank and legal authorities about the fraudulent transfer of the house deed, demanding an immediate freeze on any transactions. The cold formality of those calls, the official voices on the other end, felt like a shield against the chaos Luna had tried to create. I redirected the monthly mortgage payments, no longer flowing quietly into family accounts, but straight to the mortgage company under my control. It was a small but significant severing of their financial grip. At the same time, I withdrew my emotional support. No more calls to Lisa asking about her day. No more picking up after Mom's forgetfulness or smoothing over their crises. The silence I imposed was deafening. Almost immediately, the cracks began to show. Family members started noticing the problems. Bounced checks, delayed bills, the cold silences where warmth used to reside. Luna confronted me once, her expression sharp, accusing, but I met her eyes with a calm that startled even me. "I'm done carrying what isn't mine," I said quietly, voice steady and unyielding. Daniel watched as I transformed from the wounded woman into the methodical strategist, his quiet pride a balm to my bruised heart. The tension in the house shifted palpably, the fragile facade Luna had built beginning to crumble. For the first time in months, I felt the tide turning, not with wild fury, but with slow, undeniable certainty. The first act of the reckoning had begun. The day of the family meeting felt surreal, like stepping onto a stage that had been set for years but with a script I was finally writing. Uncle Harold's uneasy invitation had drawn everyone together under one roof, and as I gathered the papers, bank statements, email printouts, the legal documents confirming the rightful ownership of the house, I could feel the weight of every sacrifice I'd made settling around my shoulders like armor. The living room smelled faintly of old wood and lemon polish, but the air was thick with tension. Luna and Mom sat across from me, their smiles forced, eyes flickering with unease as I began to speak. "For years, I supported this family silently," I said, voice calm but steady, paying mortgages, covering bills, holding this home together when no one else would. But the truth is, support without respect is a hollow gift. I laid the documents on the table one by one, letting the evidence speak louder than any plea. The house deed was transferred without my consent, funds have been misdirected, and the promises made to me kept empty. This ends now. The room grew silent, the usual chatter replaced by shifting bodies and uneasy glances. Lisa's face went pale, Mom's eyes darted away, and Luna's charming mask cracked just enough for me to see the panic beneath. I caught Daniel's quiet nod from the corner, a small anchor in the storm. "I'm withdrawing my financial and emotional support until honesty and respect are restored," I continued, voice firm but dignified. "I will no longer carry burdens that aren't mine to bear or accept betrayal masked as family loyalty." I saw the shock ripple through the relatives, the power dynamic tilting sharply. I was no longer the overlooked daughter. I was the one holding the keys to the family's stability, and withholding them. For a moment, the weighted silence seemed endless. Then a few whispered questions, confused looks, but no challenge. They understood the limits I had drawn. This was the reckoning I'd planned for, my champagne moment of quiet victory. In the days that followed, the consequences began to unfold with a merciless clarity. Luna's confident facade crumbled slowly as mortgage notices piled up on their doorstep. Utilities threatened shutoff. and whispered rumors spread among family friends who once admired our united front. Her frantic calls came first, urgent, pleading, promises to make things right, that rang hollow. Mom's usual cold distance faltered as she reached out, her voice trembling behind practiced restraint. But I held firm, each message answered with measured politeness, but an unyielding boundary. My resolve was no longer negotiable. The silence I imposed was deafening, yet it spoke volumes. Slowly, other family members began to question the story Luna had spun for so long. Some reached out to Daniel and me in private, their voices tinged with doubt and regret. The house, once a symbol of warmth and unity, had become a battleground, a place where control was contested and trust shattered. I could feel the shift beneath their feet, the fragile network of alliances unraveling thread by thread. My withdrawal wasn't just a punishment. It was justice unfolding quietly, decisively. I watched as Luna's world tilted, powerless to call me back into the fold. When Luna realized that manipulation and charm no longer worked, her desperation deepened. Threats of legal action came next, coupled with public declarations of her victimhood, a family martyr wronged and abandoned. She orchestrated meetings, rallied relatives, and spread whispers that painted me as the cold, heartless one. But I was prepared. My lawyer swiftly dismantled her baseless claims, the airtight evidence I'd gathered standing unshaken. The truth was no longer mine alone. It was a shield against her attacks. The smokescreen she tried to raise only exposed her isolation. Some family members, including Lisa, reached out with hesitant apologies, their regret genuine but cautious. I listened but kept my guard up, aware that forgiveness was a process, not a surrender. Luna's confident grip on the family's narrative weakened daily, her manipulative veil slipping into desperation. The power she had wielded for so long was slipping from her fingers like sand. Each failed attempt to regain control left her more alone, a queen stripped of her throne but still clinging to the edges. I felt no glee, only a cold satisfaction that the truth, finally, had its day. 6 months later, the house feels different, quieter, smaller without the clamor of family gatherings, but filled with a new kind of peace. Daniel and I live here now, the legal owner and protector of this home that was once a battlefield. The air smells of fresh paint and soft linen. Sunlight filters gently through the curtains. Family contact is limited, tentative. Lisa calls occasionally, her voice uncertain, but I respond only when I choose, setting boundaries that protect my fragile peace. Mom and Luna remain distant shadows in the periphery, their choices having shaped this quiet exile. Inside, the silence is not loneliness, but freedom. I reflect on the journey, not with bitterness, but with a clarity that surprises me. Peace, I've learned, is more valuable than approval or acceptance. I've reclaimed my power, drawing lines that no one can cross and holding to them with steady hands. The house may no longer echo with the laughter of a fractured family, but the love Daniel and I share fills every corner. The future is unwritten, but it is mine to shape, with dignity, strength, and a quiet hope that true family is built on respect, not demands. And in this new chapter, I finally breathe easy.